Hello, my name's Julian Edgar and I'm the author of a whole lot of books on car modification. What I want to do in today's video is look at constructing your own airbox made from steel. Now this airbox I made for one of my car projects. It was a relatively small, low powered car, but exactly the same techniques can be scaled up to cope with pretty well any power you want. But first, why did I need to make a new airbox? Well, this is the car, the little Honda Insight, and the arrow points to the standard airbox. Now, the issue was that I was turbocharging the car and the turbo goes back here, and therefore the outlet of the airbox needs to be heading in that direction. And you can see, in fact, the outlet is here of the standard airbox. I wanted the intake to the airbox to be over here, and while that curved tube is the intake, it ends up way over here. So really, I wanted a airbox with the positions of the inlet and outlets in a better location, and I also wanted to be able to flow a lot more air than the original standard little air filter could. Here's the new airbox, really an air cylinder, isn't it? In situ, in the location. This curved tube here is an intercooler feed tube that needed to pass around. There's the outlet of the airbox. The inlet of the airbox is under here. Let's explore how I made this and what I tried to achieve in doing so. So I started with some 6-inch, 150mm diameter truck exhaust pipe. Easily able to be bought by the meter or the yard from any big truck exhaust supplier, and it gets over a lot of the problem of trying to fabricate a box because most of the container is already there. Here's jumping forward a few steps. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting a cylindrical air filter into the tube. That cylindrical air filter is an off-the-shelf filter for a Saab 9000. A cylindrical filter has a lot of area, especially when you open up all the pleats, and so it flows extremely well. I prefer always to use paper air filters and not oiled foam or aftermarket oiled paper or any of those ones. We know that factory air filters filter really, really well, and they, in my measurements, have very low pressure drops. So obviously if you were going for a really powerful car, you could then start looking at truck air filters and things of that sort, which can flow an enormous quantity of air. So a cylindrical filter that fits within a cylindrical airbox. You can see here, this is the inlet to the system, which I have constructed from slightly larger tube than the outlet, and it's coming in at a 45-degree angle. We'll come back to him a bit later. You can also see some brackets that I welded onto the barrel shape of the airbox. This is the outlet of the airbox. A few things to see here. I have a tapered outlet, so effectively I have a bell mouth inside here to get best flow exiting the airbox. And I also have a lid which is screwed on with 3 screws that go into captive nuts that we'll see in a minute. In between the lid and the airbox, there's a flange that I've welded to the inside, but also there's a rubber gasket that I cut out of sheet rubber. Here's the inlet to the airbox again, but you can see now I've added a plastic bell mouth. A bell mouth will improve the flow into the airbox. This is actually a subwoofer vent that I've simply cut down and then used a rubber adapter to connect it to the inlet of the airbox. You want to get best flow in and best flow out and best flow through the filter. Here's the inlet in the car. I'm picking up air from behind the headlights. Or this headlight, there's enough gaps here for air to flow through, and there's enough gaps that the air flowing through to that inlet is always reasonably cool. It doesn't get stinking hot in summer. So I talked about welding a flange to the one end of the airbox, the open end. The other end is just sealed off with a disc welded in. And here are the captive nuts, the riv nuts that I've inserted. There are 3 of those, and then the lid screws down with that gasket sitting on this surface. You can see there's the air filter. You can see that there's a gasket here, and the bell mouth I described that fits on the inside of the exit pipe nestles nicely into that filter gasket. Now, what about the other end, deep inside the airbox? Well, you don't want the filter sliding off to one side. You want a nice air gap all the way around the outside of the filter so that the air can flow in easily through that entrance duct. And what I did is, before I welded the base plate on, I welded a couple of spigots in place, 3 spigots, and they locate that end of the air filter, so it always is sitting with a gap all the way around it. When you insert the air filter, obviously you are careful that it fits within those spigots. So this is looking at the airbox getting much closer to completion. You can see the air inlet with its bell mouth, you can see the air exit, and there's that plastic bell mouth that fits inside and nestles against the gasket material of the air filter. You can see the 3 screws that hold the end on. Obviously you need to be able to take the end off when you want to change the filter, and here are the brackets. There are actually 3 brackets, you can see 2 of them here. The wall thickness of the truck exhaust pipe is thick enough that you can weld directly to it, which makes mounting it quite easy. Now's the time also, it's been powder coated since we last saw a photo of it, but now's also the time to look at air inlets that you might want to have on the exit plumbing. And this is the return line for a blow-off valve. You might also want to look at adding fittings for crankcase breathers and things of that sort. Now, I've got the whole airbox assembly powder coated, and I've got it with a wrinkle powder coat. It makes it easier to hide any imperfections, to be honest, and it looks really good in the car. It looks like it should be there. A lot of people look under the bonnet, under the hood of the car, and don't even realise that it's a fabricated airbox. They think, in fact, that's how the manufacturer made it. So back again to the complete airbox. So air inlet, and I've added a clamp to stop that little air inlet falling off the bell mouth. I've added some more brackets. This bracket holds a solenoid. Here's a mounting bracket. Here's a mistake. I actually put an air inlet there and decided I didn't really needed it, so I've just put a blanking cap on it. The return line for the blow-off valve, I can't remember offhand what this one is. Notice also I've put rolled a little edge around the intake. That's the intake to the engine, the exit from the airbox, just so that hose can't easily fall off. So there's the completed assembly. And then here it is back again in the car. There's that blow-off valve and the air return. So the advantages of taking this approach are manifest. It uses an off-the-shelf component for most of the airbox, which is the truck exhaust tube. It uses an off-the-shelf air filter, which is a high-flow air filter, probably good for 300 or 400 horsepower, I would think. If you want to go over that, I'd recommend going to a truck exhaust filter or things of that sort. It's got a removable end. There is just enough room if you undo this clamp and undo these screws to take the end off, and there's just enough room to get the air filter out, and it's relatively easily made. If you've got welding gear or brazing gear, this is a fairly straightforward design of airbox to make, a lot easier than trying to fabricate something that fits together in 2 halves to take a rectangular air filter or anything of that sort. I actually cover it in one of my books. I cover it in the book on the Honda Insight because I cover the turbocharging of that engine, and the construction of the airbox was part of that project. Thank you.